Hi, kids. I know when I recorded the last video, I said that I was going to do another one tomorrow, but then I saw that a lot of you guys hadn't looked at it, so I waited. Now I see only 4 people have looked at it, so try and look at the first chapter of Edward Tulane. And I wrote, here's my little chalkboard, and I wrote a few of the words that I wrote last time. The first one I wrote, this from chapter 1, is condescending. And, Edward is a character. He's a fake rabbit, but he's a character that has thoughts and feelings and emotions, and he thinks he's really great. That's one thing about Edward, is that he's kind of snobby because he has fancy clothes and he's made out of china, which, as I explained to you, is a type of clay that did come from China and the country China. And so he's very arrogant, which means you think you're all that. So in the first chapter, he said he did not care for Abeline's parents and their condescending manner toward him. All adults, in fact, condescended to him. And that means when you condescend to somebody, you look down on them. So you see the con, it means with, and descend means to go down. So it means you don't think somebody is good, and he thinks he's really great, and then he gets upset that other people don't. And then in the next chapter, in chapter 2, it kind of relates to the same thing. This is when the new maid found him. Came upon Edward sitting on his chair, and she said, "What's this bunny doing here?" she said out loud. Edward did not care at all for the word bunny because, he thinks he's really great. He found it derogatory in the extreme. So derogatory also means when you say something about somebody who they don't like it, they think you're looking down on them, or it's something not that nice or kind of mean. And then I also wrote demented. Because I really love that word. So this is when he's waiting, when the maid puts him up on that shelf, and it says he waited there with the dolls twittering and giggling at him like a flock of demented and unfriendly birds, until Abeline came home from school and found him missing and ran from room to room calling his name. So demented means crazy or, insane, nutty, whatever. Anyway, so as we know, Edward, I already described his character, his personality. So at the end of chapter 2, it says, the Rosie affair and the vacuum cleaner incident, those were the great dramas of Edward's life until the night of Abeline's 11th birthday, when at the dinner table, as the cake was being served, the ship was mentioned. And I already showed you the picture, but whoops. There's the picture of the dining table. She's called the Queen Mary, said Abeline's father, and you and your mamma and I shall sail on her all the way to London. What about Pellegrina? Said Abeline. I will not go, said Pellegrina. I will stay. Edward, of course, was not listening. He found the talk around the dinner table excruciatingly dull. That means boring. In fact, he made a point of not listening if he could help it. But then Abeline did something unusual, something that forced him to pay attention. As the talk about the ship continued, Abeline reached for Edward and took him from his chair and stood him in her lap. And what about Edward? She said, her voice high and uncertain, like this. What about Edward? What about him, darling? Said her mother. Will Edward be sailing on the Queen Mary with us? Well, of course, if you wish, although you are getting a little old for such things as china rabbits. Nonsense, said Abeline's father jovially. Get the hint? Who would protect Abeline if Edward was not there? From the vantage point of Abeline's lap, Edward could see the whole table spread out before him in a way that he never could when he was seated in his own chair. He looked upon the glittering array of silverware and glasses and plates. He saw the amused and condescending looks of Abeline's parents, and then his eyes met Pellegrina's. She was looking at him in the way a hawk hanging lazily in the air might study a mouse on the ground. Perhaps the rabbit fur on Edward's ears and tail and the whiskers on his nose had some dim memory of being hunted, for a shiver went through him. Yes, said Pellegrina, without taking her eyes off Edward. Who would watch over Abeline if the rabbit was not there? That night, when Abeline asked, as she did every night, if there would be a story, Pellegrina said, "Tonight, lady, there will be a story." Abilene sat up in bed. I think that Edward needs to sit here with me, she said, so that he can hear the story too. I think that is best, said Pellegrina. Yes, I think that the rabbit must hear the story. Abilene picked Edward up, sat him next to her in bed, and arranged the covers around him. Then she said to Pellegrina, "We are ready now." "So," said Pellegrina, she coughed, "and so the story begins with a princess." "A beautiful princess?" Abilene asked. "A very beautiful princess." "How beautiful?" "You must listen," said Pellegrina. "It is all in the story." End of chapter 3. Chapter 4 shows Edward tucked up in bed, looking worried in my opinion, but let's see. So this is the story that she's telling. Once there was a princess who was very beautiful. She shone as bright as the stars on a moonless night. But what difference did it make that she was beautiful? None. No difference. "Why did it make no difference?" asked Abilene. "Because," said Pellegrina, "she was a princess who loved no one and cared nothing for love, even though there were many who loved her." At this point in her story, Pellegrina stopped and looked right at Edward. She stared deep into his painted-on eyes, and again Edward felt a shiver go through him. "And so," said Pellegrina, still staring at Edward. "What happened to the princess?" said Abilene. "And so," said Pellegrina, turning back to Abilene, "the king, her father, said that the princess must marry, and soon after this a prince came from a neighboring kingdom, and he saw the princess, and immediately he loved her. He gave her a ring of pure gold. He placed it on her finger. He said these words to her, 'I love you.' But do you know what the princess did?" Abilene shook her head. "She swallowed the ring. She took it from her finger and swallowed it. She said, 'That is what I think of love.' And she ran from the prince. She left the castle and went deep into the woods. And so what?" said Abilene. "What happened then?" There's a picture of Pellegrina telling the story. "And so the princess became lost in the woods. She wandered for many days. Finally, she came to a little hut, and she knocked on the door. She said, 'Let me in. I'm cold.' There was no answer. She knocked again. She said, 'Let me in. I'm hungry.' A terrible voice answered her, and the voice said, 'Enter, if you must.' The beautiful princess entered, and she saw a witch sitting at a table counting pieces of gold. 3,622, said the witch. 'I'm lost,' said the beautiful princess. 'And what of it?' said the witch. 3,623. 'I'm hungry,' said the princess. 'Not my concern,' said the witch. 3,624. 'But I'm a beautiful princess,' said the princess. 3,625, replied the witch. 'My father,' said the princess, 'is a powerful king. You must help me, or there will be consequences.' 'Consequences?' said the witch. She looked up from her gold. She stared at the princess. 'You dare to talk to me of consequences? Very well, then, we will speak of consequences. Tell me the name of the one you love.' 'Love?' said the princess. She stamped her foot. 'Why must everyone always speak of love?' 'Whom do you love?' said the witch. 'You must tell me the name.' 'I love no one,' said the princess proudly. 'You disappoint me,' said the witch. She raised her hand and said one word. 'Farthiggery.' And so the beautiful princess was changed into a warthog. 'Oh, what have you done to me?' squealed the princess. 'Talk to me about consequences now, will you?' said the witch, and she went back to counting her pieces of gold. 3,626, said the witch, as the warthog princess ran from the hut and out again into the forest. The king's men were in the forest too, and what were they looking for? A beautiful princess. And so, when they came upon an ugly warthog, they shot it immediately. Bow! 'No,' said Abilene. Yes, said Pellegrina. The men took the warthog back to the castle, and the cook split open its belly, and inside she found a ring of pure gold. There were many hungry people in the castle that night, and all of them were waiting to be fed. So the cook put the ring on her finger and finished butchering the warthog. And the ring that the beautiful princess had swallowed shone on the cook's hand as she did her work. The end. What? The end? Said Abilene indignantly. Yes, said Pellegrina, the end. But it can't be. Why can't it be? Because it came too quickly, because no one is living happily ever after, that's why. And so... Pellegrina nodded. She was quiet for a moment. But answer me this. How can a story end happily if there is no love? But, well, it is late, and you must go to sleep. Pellegrina took Edward from Abilene. She put him in his bed and pulled the sheet up to his whiskers. She leaned close to him and she whispered, "You disappoint me." After the old lady left, Edward lay in his small bed and stared up at the ceiling. The story, he thought, had been pointless. But then most stories were. He thought of the princess and how she had become a warthog. How gruesome! How grotesque! What a terrible fate! Edward, said Abilene, I love you. I don't care how old I get, I will always love you. Yes, yes, thought Edward. He continued to stare up at the ceiling. He was agitated for some reason that he could not name. He wished that Pellegrina had put him on his side so that he might look at the stars. And then he remembered Pellegrina's description of the beautiful princess. She shone as bright as the stars on a moonless night. For some reason, Edward found comfort in these words, and he repeated them to himself. As bright as the stars on a moonless night, as bright as the stars on a moonless night, over and over, until at last the first light of dawn appeared. It's the end of chapter 4. Chapter 5 shows us, I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to show the picture of them preparing in the old days, people did not use suitcases. They used trunks, which are like big boxes that have lids and they have handles, and they would pack their stuff inside of trunks. And sometimes, like, you could turn the trunk on the side and it would have little coat hangers, and I don't know. Anyways, so the family's going to get ready to go on the ship. Now we know they're going to, where did it say they were going to? I think they're going, oh yeah, they're going all the way to London, England, just like, well, the Titanic was going the opposite way, right? It was going, they sailed from England and were almost to the shore. So they were going from London to New York. And these people must be going from New York to London, England. So I think the story's getting a little bit exciting. I think drama is coming up, maybe on the ship. I think Edward will be able to go on the journey. What do you think about Pellegrina? Do you think she seems kind of like a evil character in the way that she said, and then what she said to Edward was interesting when she said, "You disappoint me." I don't know what he could do that disappoints her, right? And the story was interesting too. It had magic, it had transformation, it had a princess, which is interesting because we just read about the Princess P, who was a very loving character. But this princess, I don't blame her for not wanting to just marry some random prince that she doesn't even know. But I thought it was cool that she swallowed the ring and then got turned into a warthog, and then the cook found the ring. So let's see what happens later, if the ring has something important to do. And then, of course, there's also the thing that Katie Camilo loves to write about stars and constellations. And at the end of chapter 4, it said he repeated to himself, "As bright as the stars on a moonless night," over and over until he fell asleep. Oh no, until the first light of dawn appeared. Anyway, thanks for listening. So today is actually Wednesday, the 15th of April. And I think we're going to try and have a meeting tomorrow. I've been talking to a lot of you guys on the Google Classroom, so I hope everybody can join by tomorrow. And then I hope you're watching the videos. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon.